Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob Stone. I'm a partner and relationship manager at Telemus Capital. For those of you new to Telemus Capital, we are a financial life services company. We have offices in Detroit, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Ann Arbor. And I'd like to welcome my special guest today, Deborah Wahl. Deborah was appointed the General Motors Global Chief Marketing Officer in September of 2019. Prior to that, she was the CMO of Cadillac and Cadillac Brands. And her career has kind of taken her through the auto industry. Prior to that, her role at Cadillac, she was the Chief Marketing Officer of McDonald's. And then prior to that, Pulte Homes, Chrysler, and Lexus. I think I got all those right. Deborah earned her bachelor's degree in economics at Wellesley College and an MBA from the Wharton School. And she also has a master's degree from the Lauder Institute at the University of Pennsylvania. She also serves on the board of Groupon, Mediaocean, and the Mobile Marketing Association, as well as serving on the board of trustees of the Cranbrook Educational Community. With that, I'd like to welcome Deb and let's start out with the whole process of what's going on in the auto industry post-COVID-19 and where are we at? Let's start with the simple question.
All right. Yeah, let's get right into it. And hi, Bob. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. And hello to everyone else out there. The current state of the auto industry. Well, I think if you saw from my background, I really love the whole idea of Maslow's hierarchy. We really want to start with food, housing, and transportation is really the core indicators of what's happening overall in the economy. So for the auto industry, it's been quite a few challenging last 3 months, but it's very exciting right now. As you might have heard, on the 18th, we started resuming manufacturing, which is critical in the industry. Now, the challenge here is to make sure that we put safety first, that we have spent an enormous amount of time developing protocols for how people can return back to work and especially back to our plants in the safest manner possible, doing everything we can to practice what we know about COVID to make sure that all of our employees and team members are protected. So it's really interesting for General Motors, and I don't know how many people know this, but we're a company that actually puts safety as a huge priority. Every single meeting that we have, we actually start with a safety message. And that could be a personal safety message, a workplace safety message about really making sure that in all aspects, we're doing the best to take care of each other. So that's really taken a whole new level right now. So we're back to manufacturing slowly. I think the ramp up is going to be slow. Most interesting is that we've seen consumer demand remain fairly strong. And I think that's what everyone is watching closely to see where we get to and how that pans out. And I think it's a day-by-day thing. The key words in this day and age are agility and flexibility, for sure.
So, going back to you're ramping up, General Motors had production of ventilators in the Kokomo, Indiana plant, if I remember correctly. Any lessons that you learned while you were going through that process that you're carrying forward into the factories today?
Yeah, I think one, that was an incredible time where Mary Barra basically answered a call for help, and our team sprung into action. And we're saying, I think personally and both in companies, you're seeing the true soul of a company come out in all these challenges and what happens. So when Mary got the call about the need for ventilators, some of our engineering and supply chain management team sprung into action. And 18 days from the first meeting where they flew out to Ventec out on the West Coast to production, it was only 18 days. So for good or bad, that has become the new benchmark upon which we're now measuring everything. Figure if we could get into the manufacturing business and actually get up and running on a whole new production line for ventilators, something we'd never done, if we can do that in 18 days, then it's the new challenge for everyone. And I think that's what we've all seen is we come together, work really differently, and attack problems in a different manner. Since we can't be face to face in an office, everyone's had to really figure out how to work incredibly differently. So we're setting new benchmarks for agility, collaboration, how we get things done.
Okay. Hey, before I ask another question, just so people know who are participating, There is a Q&A bar at the bottom, so if you have any questions for later on in the webinar, please click on the quick Q&A chat box and send questions, and I'll answer those or ask those towards the end. So you said demand is up. What's selling? And I guess what's not selling?
Well, it's really interesting. So when I say demand is up, first we're just seeing and watching very closely what people are doing online, how consumers are shopping. We've seen an increase in lead generations significantly since March. We're seeing people really start to move into this, how much shopping can they do online? That's increasing as well. So where are we seeing demand? I think if you look at the market overall, what's probably highest for all of us in the industry is pickups and large SUVs. Some of that's helped currently by the price of gas. I know I filled up my tank this morning for $2, which was really up since the last time I filled it up, which was at about $1.75. So, you know, that's a remarkable change these days. Obviously, we're seeing demand overall fall for cars, sedans, that continues. But I just see a lot of demand going on in the truck market.
Does this exacerbate the kind of the decline of the sedan? Is this, you know, among other things, is this the beginning, you know, or just accelerating that lack of demand?
Well, I think anytime gas prices go way down, demand for trucks and SUVs has always gone up. So we're not seeing any difference. But I think it's going to be interesting because even with all this that's going on today, we still see the demand for EVs and such growing. And that impact on what kind of configuration of vehicle you want will be adapting and changing. I think the classic sedan, except for things like we're launching the CT6 and the CT5 and the CT4 for Cadillac, which are mid-size sedans, and they're fabulous. I mean, they are beautiful driving machines. You definitely should be checking one out soon, so we'll have to work on that.
Sure, you'll help me.
I might help you with that. You know, but we're seeing a lot of demand for that. So yes, overall the market's still pacing towards trucks and SUVs, but there is a segment that loves a great performance driving vehicle that we'll always see.
So I'm going to skip a question and come back to it in a minute, but you mentioned EVs. So, you know, given COVID-19 and very cheap oil, you know, what effect does that have on some of the mega trends that are coming through the auto industry, like electrification or autonomous driving, or some of the safety systems that all the auto industry is kind of putting into their cars?
Yeah, I actually, over the longer term, I don't see that significantly impacting that trend. In fact, it's been so fascinating. I'm sure we've all gone through the distinctive and significant challenges of the pandemic, but also we have seen so many other things that I think are opening everyone's eyes. I mean, certainly the change in the atmosphere, the clarity that we saw from all the pictures that came through on Earth Day of what can happen when everyone really does attack emissions overall. No one expected at the startling pace is significant. So we see the trend and desire for EVs continuing. I think it's still pacing, and a lot of it will just depend on, I think the curve of that will depend on what happens as we come out of this whole era right now into recovery. I call it the BC era, post or the AC era after COVID.
Is there, given, you know, the General Motors is a global firm, are you seeing any kind of other general economic trends developing throughout this whole process that, you know, that maybe a smaller local firm wouldn't see?
That's a good question. I don't know if it is the same or not overall, but certainly the biggest things that we're looking at right now is the way we work. That is changing. I think that will be a definitive change overall. So the fact that right now my team has been operating now going on 13 weeks from home and been more effective than ever, I think forever changes the landscape about how we think about work, where we think about work, what kind of buildings we're in, et cetera, what kind of office space you're in. So, we've learned a lot on that. I think the idea of agility and collaboration forever changes the way we think about timing and how long things take us. The other thing that we're seeing, at least in the auto industry, you know, we've spoken for, you know, decades about when do people really go more online for shopping? Up until now, it's really been about like 10% of the population that wants to fully go online shopping. But as people go through this, they're ordering all their groceries online, everything's changing. I think we'll see a big pivot in expectations. And I know that we've transitioned quickly with all of our brands. So if you look at what Chevy, Cadillac, Buick, and GMC are doing, you now can get through an online shopping experience much more efficiently. Our dealers are offering, remote test drives, so they will deliver a vehicle wherever you are, so that if you're not comfortable coming into a dealership, you can go. I think there's a mega trend that I find fascinating. We've been watching it for a while, this whole health and wellness and personal safety mega trend that's been going on. Now that has just taken a significant catalyst now with this whole era. And everyone is much more concerned about their personal safety, the environment that they're in. So suddenly the fact that we have ionizers in our vehicles, which cleans any air that comes in, has a whole different meaning today than what it did even 6 months ago. The idea of we're launching with our dealership something called Clean, so that you know that they're thoroughly cleaning and using techniques and processes to disinfect or make sure that they sanitize the interior of any vehicle that you would get into. I think that's more and more important. And then the whole trend going on, we'll see what happens, but we keep watching we survey regularly consumers and what they think. And so the idea of rideshare has really, we'll see where that comes back to, but the discomfort people have, yeah.
I was going to ask you, I mean, people, there's a lot of people that are becoming germaphobes. Is this, kind of changing people's perspective and more people buying cars because they're not going to take public transportation and take the train to work or not take an Uber to work? I mean, is that something that comes out of this?
Yeah, I think we're watching that really carefully. At least in the surveys right now, we're definitely seeing all that trend. We're seeing a desire to move back to suburbia because, you have more space and you're in your own space. We're seeing a desire for less rideshare. I think that has, decreased. About 50% of public transportation users traditionally are using it less right now, and 34% of those are due to health and safety concerns. So if you put that all together, that really means that the future of transportation might take a whole different trend. I don't know if you drove the CT6 yet with Super Cruise, but suddenly that's a way to do longer commutes, or if you have to be on the road for hours, or even something that you would have typically taken a short plane to. Now you can do hands-free driving. It's incredibly relaxing, but you're in your own space. You have your own personal safety. You've got, the environment that you feel comfortable living in. I think we'll see, as depending on how we get through the rest of these phases of COVID-19, we'll see how that pans out. But I think a lot of very interesting trends to watch.
Going back to online shopping, is General Motors and all of its brands going to have its own shopping site, or are you going to rely more on like Vroom and Carvana and the other iterations of online shopping like that?
I think we're relying on a significant partnership with our dealers still. I mean, we think having a strong network like that is incredibly valuable. They do a great job. But what we have collectively done, if you go on a GM website, one of our brands, there's something called Shop Click Drive, which enables you, once you know what vehicle you want, you can really do the online process almost to the end. Obviously, there's still some things that we have to do in person, but the dealers are partnering with us on that so that they can enable for any of our potential customers the type of shopping experience that they want. We're also seeing something for anyone who's ever shopped on Cadillac. We have something called Cadillac Live. So that's now a virtual shopping site that you can go on. You can actually make an appointment to virtually engage with someone, and they'll do a full walk around of the vehicle, answer any of your questions. They have video cameras, so it's not like you're on your own. You can actually ask them, hey, how much how much room is there in the back seat? They'll get in, they'll tell you how tall they are. You can see all that virtually. So we're seeing a lot of interest. That usage has picked up dramatically since January, as you would expect.
And do you think that'll continue on now that people have kind of gotten used to it and people are more comfortable? That's going to be another, kind of avenue for General Motors to sell more cars?
Yeah, I really do. Again, it's that sort of it's been slowly going that way, but this has been a catalyst that's made a lot more people comfortable with it. And then I think it's incumbent upon us to really deliver a great experience while people are looking to shop that way.
So kind of switching gears, I kind of have two questions, kind of more global questions. What positive things do you see coming out of this in terms of the auto industry? Any kind of ray of sunshine that people can kind of latch onto now and going forward?
Yeah, I think it's made everyone really focus on what matters for the shopping experience, what matters in the experience overall. And I know that we as a network have moved dramatically towards that. So about 85% of our dealers are now doing shop, click, drive, and that's significantly higher than it was before. And I think we're really focused on moving extremely fast. So all these things that we put in place, we use that 18-day benchmark, which is now the benchmark for getting anything done. And so we're really developing and expanding that a lot faster. I think the most interesting thing on a personal, interaction idea is that even though we've never been further apart with our teams physically, but yet we're so much closer together. And is it because that we have to be on a lot more phone calls where we're just making decisions and getting things done, and then people go off and do their own thing? It's really been an interesting phenomenon, and we all feel much more productive. And
how many Zoom calls a day are you doing now?
Oh, I'm still on like 10 hours a day. But at the same time, I'm at home. I don't have my commute. I'm in better shape than I've ever been. I'm with my family. I see my son a lot more. There's all these benefits that I think all of us have realized, even in our personal and work lives, that have been, while we were how many times a week did we all go out for have dinners and do all these things and go to conferences and be traveling all the time on planes? And all of that time has been eliminated so we can focus on our families. And yet I know I personally feel much more productive at work, and our teams have been incredibly productive. So to me, that's the big aha. It's how we work, how we engage, how we do this effectively, that I think is really going to be a mainstay and change the way that business is done.
And then to add on to that question, this is something a friend of mine kind of suggested I ask, but how does General Motors take advantage of this crisis? I mean, it's unfortunate, but I mean, how do you take advantage and gain market share, or, I don't know, how do you take advantage of this?
Yeah, and we never look at it like it's taking advantage, but I think what we always do is there's learnings in everything.
Sure.
So I know that I was on a roll at the beginning of the year. I had these amazing plans that we were going to do for marketing at General Motors. And it's sort of like, you can't spend any time mourning the loss of those, because that our world just pivoted. All those plans went out the window, and we've just had to really focus on what we do. And like I said, this focused on getting something core done that really helps the consumer experience. It's got everyone focused on that. So we basically let go of all those other distractions. And that's what the company is developing day after day in a really accelerated manner. So, and I think that will have a big impact for our consumers overall. We've spent the time to reassess what safety means for everyone. Like I said, our company starts every meeting with a safety message, every meeting. So, and now that whole definition of safety has changed dramatically. So it's inspiring all of us to think about how we deliver that to our customers in different manners and as quickly as possible. So in a lot of ways, a crisis, the famous saying, you never want to waste a crisis, but I think it's really important for us all to learn, pivot quickly, and be agile, and then not mourn the past. That was the biggest thing, even for our kids who are graduating, all that. We were talking about internships before. They just can't mourn those. They've got to look ahead of them and what they could possibly learn going forward.
Sounds good. There's a couple questions coming in that I thought I wanted to toss in here right now. And first one is, there's been some recent reports that the future of travel will be increasingly involve road trips due to COVID and fears of, traveling on an airplane, et cetera. Is there something GM is taking into account? Is this something that GM is taking into account when they're looking at the future, and if so, how?
Yeah, in a few ways. One, I think really developing our autonomous driving capabilities so that you can be in your own personal safety vehicles and be going further without stress is something that we had been working towards already, but I think this will accelerate that. and accelerate demand for that. So that's one thing that we certainly see. Someone asked me the other day, will we be looking at places you can put your mask in the car? Where do you hang your mask? So I don't think so, because I think
right next to the key holder, probably.
Yeah, that will right next to the place you put your purse. So I think we'll see over the long term as these things develop. But I do think this is going to change the way we look at personal transportation, our own safety bubble, you know, how we're going to do. I don't think that's a short-term trend.
On the production side of things, you know, there's been a large reduction in vehicle production, obviously because all the plants stopped, you know, kind of running. So, you know, kind of the trickle down effect is suppliers are kind of, you know, kind of getting hurt. You know, is there a way that the auto industry, the, you know, Ford, Chrysler, GM are really kind of reaching out and helping out their supplier networks and make sure that they're around, you know, for the future?
Yeah, it's been absolutely paramount. I think our approach from all of this has been to how do we do it together and do it safely. Of course, when the plants stop for the auto industry, that's when all cash flow, you have to really manage that incredibly carefully. But we worked with a lot of teams, I know even on the marketing side, to think about how do we furlough, or how does everyone take reductions in pay, and how do we approach it that way so that we could be on pace to ramp up as the recovery happens. And I think we're in that time period right now. How do we ramp up carefully? At the same time, paramount to everything is safety. So even the pace at which we start ramping up has to depend on the pace at which we can have safe protocols, a safe approach to everything, really protect everyone.
So that kind of leads in. So as you're ramping up, I mean, is there a prescribed method in terms of how the factories kind of ramp up so that all works out?
Well, you know, we're putting in place with the best expertise. We have our medical expert, Dr. Jeffrey Hess, who had actually served in the military and specialized in what happens in biological warfare, et cetera. He is now providing guidance to everything, the protocols that we put in place. So for instance, if you come in, of course, you have the series of questionnaires that you have to go through. We started mass production so that we would have a supply of masks for our employees, as well as everything that we could donate. Everyone is required to wear a mask as we come in so that we protect each other. Then everyone gets a temperature check. And then we have processes set up so that if anyone does feel any symptoms or sickness during the day or anything, there's quick movement so that we can help address that for the individual. And then of course, cleaning protocols. So we are, I think, as everyone is learning as we go, really using every day to look at what's happening scientifically to make sure that, you know, these are working to the best of everyone's. And I think what I'm really proud of is that GM has shared all of their safety protocols and what we've learned through this process, so that even the communities where our plants are can benefit. We're speaking with schools and leadership in different areas to share all that, because I think everyone's got to think about, what do you need? I mean, it goes down to the detail. We've been mapping out in every conference room. If people were to come back and able to work in the building, how many people do you have in a conference room? What do you do? And then what does that mean overall for workplace? And it's been a really paramount process, but a fascinating process as well.
Someone was asking, you mentioned the ventilators, you know, we're talking about Kokomo, Indiana plant and the ventilators. At what point do you wind that down, shut off production and turn it back over to car production?
Yeah, I don't have any prognosis on that yet. I think we're going to see what the demand is. Our purpose for doing that is to help the country and make sure demand is fulfilled. And I think as that point comes, then we'll turn it back.
Okay, fair enough. Someone wanted to know, it said, given the change in the calculus of the coastal cities, many of the benefits of high density living have become liabilities, with tech companies like Twitter and Facebook having announced that they will permit their employees to work remotely permanently. You know, do you think that the potential migration of high earners from the coastal cities to the Heartland will impact the auto industry? Is that more buyers buying Cadillac?
Yes, and here's my answer to that. One of my favorite points, which is so funny. I once had a plane ride with Dhani Jones. I don't know if you know who he is, but
Yes, I do.
NFL player. He's awesome. He's relocated to Detroit. And I was sitting in the window seat and he came in. I see this big guy coming towards me, and that poor guy gets the middle seat. And I'm thinking, oh God, how hard for him, so uncomfortable. And he looked at me when he sat down. He said, you know what? All good things come from the middle. And then we proceeded to have this awesome conversation about how that applies to the Midwest, the talent that we have here, what's going on, the quality of life, everything. That I've lived all over the world, and I moved back to Detroit because I think of all the places I've been in, this is an incredible quality of life, great people like yourself around here, really really inspiring and engaging things happening, and a ton of innovation. So I think those trends, as people discover it, are going to continue. And then as we look at the full research, we are already seeing a significant number of people who are expressing interest to go back to more suburban locales. In the last 5 years, we had all this move into the big city centers. I think you're going to see, I think, even out a lot more.
Fair enough. You mentioned working from home has been more productive, which this person agrees with. Do you see returning to the office, or are you going to work from home more and more? And is that a trend for all of, industry?
Yeah, I'm going to work from home as much as I can. I absolutely love it. And we have this discussion a lot of the time. I think in the near term, there's some big questions. One, can we go back safely to the office, and is it productive? As I was just saying, as you look at even schematics of, well, how many people could be in a conference room, you can't really fit all the people that you would want in that meeting anyways to be safe right now. So how do you keep doing that? I've been on a lot of council calls with a lot of other chief marketing officers where we're talking about, well, how do we redefine the workplace? Does the workplace become a place where you do have once a week that social interaction, you get to know each other, at least, measure, just get a better sense, or sort of engage on a different social level, and then you all go back to your place of work. You've heard lately that Facebook just declared that people work from home is permanent. So
right.
I do think we're going to see a big trend. If you think of office space in the last 10 years, all moved to that open office space. That doesn't seem appropriate anymore in this mega trend of personal safety and where you're going. So we're clearly going to have to rethink how we do everything, and continue to think about how are we most productive.
So someone asked a question regarding the impact on the travel industry and the rental car business. I noticed, I'm sure you noticed the other day that Hertz filed for bankruptcy, which that's more of a leverage issue than a management issue. Is this going to affect the car rental industry, and does it change the dynamics from more car rental to more car ownership?
I don't have a specific point of view yet on that. I think we're watching it again very carefully, but that has more to do with the whole travel business, all the stay-at-home orders, et cetera. We'll see what happens as we get back, and I think it will be a slow ramp-up curve. But same thing, time and opportunity for the rental car companies, everyone, to reinvent the business, really think about the experience overall. I think I was listening lately and watching carefully about Airbnb, what they think their approach is going to be. They actually see more growth in the future as they kind of rejigger their business model to address it. So I think we're going to see a lot of really fascinating changes in business models and focus that break some of the paradigms that were holding companies back before, and now really force them to go into some different directions that probably were inevitable.
So kind of now moving forward, so we've kind of seen that, you've hit a full stop, we're starting up production. Now that your plants have been up and running, for a week now, is there any kind of things that popped up? We'll start there. Has anything kind of popped up in the factories that you weren't prepared for, or that have been a bit of surprise, that, maybe kind of you just never expected, for the positive, or for that matter, for the negative, I guess? I
couldn't say anything specific. It's a day-by-day approach, and the most number one is just making sure everybody's safe there. So we're just monitoring that day by day and watching it carefully.
And what about the future? So what are some of the big things that are coming down the pike that, that General Motors is preparing for that, forget about COVID-19, but kind of, what do the next couple of years kind of look like for the auto industry and for General Motors more specifically?
Well, we're still doubling down on the vision of our company, which is a world of zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion. And I think as we see everything that's gone on, that is absolutely the path that consumers are going towards even faster. I think this has been a catalyst. So out of that comes electrification, autonomous driving, new ways of looking at safety. So you might be familiar with OnStar for anyone who drives or has driven a car. It was one of the first sort of connected services. Yet how do you take OnStar and allow that safety cocoon, that bubble that comes with it, to really go with you in more places? I think there is enormous opportunity there. So we'll be really looking at redefining safety systems, looking at, again, through Super Cruise and all those things which are rapidly coming onto all of our vehicles lines, starting with Cadillac, how that changes the experience. So all of these things help drive to that world of zero emissions, zero crashes, and zero congestion.
And in terms of, what was I going to ask you? In terms of electrification, is it going, it's now kind of a niche industry. Do you foresee a point in time where more electric cars are being sold than internal combustion engine cars?
We certainly do. We're ramping up to that. By the year 2025, we'll have a whole a significant model lineup for everyone to choose from. Right now, we have the Bolt, and then quickly, the Hummer EV is coming next year. And then we've already announced the Cadillac lineup, which is going all electric and will be our first brand to go all electric. So yes, we believe fully in that vision. We think there's a lot of potential. And for anyone who's driven an electric car, they're fun, they're performance oriented, they really can do a lot. And I think this whole idea of, as we become more connected overall, I think that's the other benefit we've seen in this whole thing. If we weren't so connected, none of us could have done the work that we do. So that trend will significantly continue, and the platforms that we're building for the electric cars significantly enable that.
Do we ever completely switch over to autonomous vehicles?
I don't know about that one. I don't think so. I don't think it's 100%. Because as you know, everyone has their unique needs, and there might be a day when you don't want to think and you want to just have an autonomous drive, but there might be another day where you want to be, at the wheel, sort of having that experience that you have today, driving as you want to drive, and whatever, I shouldn't say that, the speeds that a Bob Stone would drive.
Proper speeds, yes, right,
yes,
at
proper
the speed limit
speeds.
in every location.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we see like a multimodal future. You're going to have a lot of needs, everything from, if you do work in an urban center, if you're in San Francisco, you might have, a flying vehicle that could take you to certain parts. You might have an autonomous one if you want to do 4 or 5 hour commuting trips that happen. Then you might want your own personal vehicle that you're in full control at all times. So I really see it that way.
Okay, just questions are still open. If you have any questions, please send them to the side in the Q&A box. I actually wanted to kind of go into like kind of my rapid fire questions, if you don't mind. So I stole this from another podcast that I listened to. So let's kind of, they're simple. They're just interesting. What General Motors car are you driving right now?
I have a Cadillac XT6 right now and an XT4.
Okay. And what's your favorite car you ever built?
Oh, there's a beautiful, the Cadillac Eldorado convertible that was in the 60s. Absolutely gorgeous, clean lines, stunning.
Okay. This might be a little controversial when I ask this. Is Tesla going to be around in 5 years or 10 years?
I believe so. Yeah, I think, yep, they're continuing, but that's the wild card in the industry, but I believe they will be.
Do you think this is more of a PR stunt that Elon Musk is kind of poking California in the eye about production and threatening to move to California?
Let me just sigh on that one and say I have no comment on all that craziness.
Fair enough. I don't want to get GM in trouble in any way, shape, or form. You've been in the auto industry for a couple years. Are there any role models or any mentors that you've kind of come across that, really kind of set you in the right direction in terms of getting you to where you are today?
Oh my God, so many. There is a wonderful person named Dr. Harry Cohen who wrote a book called Be the Sun, Not the Salt recently. And he's mentored me my entire life, my entire professional life. There's a lot of people in the auto industry, including, Mary and Mark, and then of course, Jim Press and Jim Lentz, who I worked with at Toyota, among others, who've just really given incredible examples of leadership. And I think that's why I love being at GM right now. You have a full suite of people who are really incredibly solid in their expertise and capacity, and fully good people through and through. And that's, who I've decided at this point in my life, that's the only, type of people that I want to be working with.
Much easier,
and then I have,
right?
yeah. And then I think I always look for examples, throughout. So there is Mark Pritchard, who's the CMO of Procter & Gamble. We work a lot together, and he's done terrific things. It's just sort of, there's a lot of great.
And to add on to that question, if you could work with any CEO, I know Mary Barr has been a wonderful CEO and person to work with. Any CEO, past or present, who would you work for? Who would you want to work for?
See, now you just eliminated the one, because I made a whole change in my life to come back home to Michigan.
We're not shipping you out of town. This is just hypothetical. We'd like to have you around town. Thank you.
I think what the other group that I'm really watching is Satya at Microsoft. I think he's done an incredible job of, transforming that company.
Okay, so we're kind of running out of time. A couple more questions that are popping up here. When is Cadillac EV crossover going to be introduced or revealed? And when can someone get on the order list? I'll send you the name so you can put them at the top of the list.
Definitely send me the name, but you'll be seeing more on that later this year.
Okay. Next question, do you foresee more joint partnerships, cross-platform, such as like the Honda EV platforms, et cetera, where you're working with other auto companies to maybe share technology as well as costs?
Potentially. I think, the two things that we've done lately, where we've launched the Ultium battery propulsion system that Honda's come in with us on, and that we're building actually a gigafactory to produce those. The trick on all of that for EV is scale, as you can imagine. We all need to bring down the cost of those batteries and drive scale. So I think if there are opportunities, the company would certainly consider them.
A couple more questions. As an owner of a creative agency in California, it's been challenging to deal with our clients with not having person-to-person meetings. How are you handling that at GM?
It's been fascinating. I mean, so many more conversations and FaceTime conversations all the time. And it's actually been really productive. I find that I just get a lot done instead of actually being in the format of big meetings. The smaller, quick phone calls and constant discussions and updates and staying in touch with everyone has actually helped us do better. So, if you have any great creative talent in California that would like to consider relocating to the center of the country, we could talk further on that.
I'll forward that person's name on to you too. You could have a conversation. Okay, we're kind of running out of time. We've got a couple more minutes left. I had one other question, and this may be more engineering and maybe a Mark Royce question that we can get to later, but is there a fuel cell car in the future of General Motors?
It's a good question. Obviously, the teams are always looking at all the latest technology, but we've really, on all the analysis, decided that EVs and the Ultium battery technology is what we think, where we think the future should be.
Okay. Any last words for our listeners in terms of the future of the auto industry and the direction that General Motors is going into before we close this up?
Well, two things. As I'm looking at it, I think the future is good. And there's a lot of great potential and possibility. And I think it's one of the best times ever to be working in auto. And then second, I'd just like to do a call out. I saw in the chat come up that Adam Gordon is on the line. So I just want to say a big hello to Adam.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'm sure he appreciates that. So on behalf of all of us at Telemus and all of us at my household, we want to say thank you very much for participating. We appreciate it. And definitely like to do this again, maybe at the end of the year, and get another update once General Motors has kind of gotten up and running a little bit more, and see if we can get a little bit, one more update from you, if that's possible.
Wonderful. Thanks. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Deb. We'll talk to you soon. I appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.